All right, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host, David Lesch. We are always encouraging you to stay connected. Tweet me at David Lesch. In September of 2022, a fire ravaged a Bronx building, causing tenants to be displaced and put into a shelter. A lawsuit was filed as a result. Russel Crane from the Legal Aid Society is here to tell us more. Russell, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So let's talk a little bit about this building. Has this building always had issues? Maybe a little bit of background, if you could.
Yes, this building's had a long history of having problems. So in 2014, the building was placed into a program that HPD has called the Alternative Enforcement Program. That program is specifically designed for severely distressed buildings. And HPD found that there were a number of building-wide issues that needed to be addressed, including rewiring the building, including fixing floor joists, including putting on a new roof. And this building has been in that program since 2014, so that's almost 10 years of being in a program for.
How do you get into the program? Like, does somebody call 311, or are you alerted some way? How do we know that a building like this should be in a program?
So the city's alternative enforcement program, as I said, is meant for severely distressed buildings. So it would be coming out of a number of housing code violations that the city is issuing for that building. And I think when inspectors are there and they're seeing that this is a very neglected building with a lot of problems.
All right, so now you find out that the building has problems. Do you alert the tenants as to what their rights may be and what they can now do, or do you just come in there and tell the owners to just fix things up immediately? What's the next phase?
Right. Well, I mean, in this case, so the city had the program in the alternative enforcement program since 2014, and they had their own litigation against the owner. They had cases for false certifications of violations, for failing to provide heat and hot water to tenants, for needing to get access to remediate lead paint. So that all happened before the fire in September 2022 that you referenced.
Well, let's talk about the fire itself. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know that we know exactly what happened. Tenants do believe that there was an electrical problem that caused the fire, and the fire sort of has, the building sort of has two wings to it. And so the fire that was started on one side of the wing, caused severe damage in that entire wing of the building. And what was really, horrific about this situation is that tenants, smelled the smoke and were trying to get out, went downstairs, and an emergency door they found locked, and they could not get out. And that was actually a violation that the city had cited the landlord for.
Were there fatalities as a result of the fire, or mostly smoke inhalation? What exactly happened?
Thankfully, there were no fatalities. Smoke inhalation for sure. One of our clients, adult sons, was injured trying to escape.
Oh, no.
But no fatalities. So that is good. But trauma,
of course,
loss of possessions, a whole life's worth of things that tenants don't have anymore.
So what's legal aid doing as a result?
Well, so we have tenants have asked for our help to have the landlord make the repairs that are needed so that they can return to their home. So after the fire, because of the damage to the building, tenants were displaced. Many of them are now living in city shelters, and they just want to go back to their homes. Some of them have lived there for decades.
I understand that many of them are very unhappy because they're not happy with the shelter shelter situation. What can you do for them in the meantime?
Well, I mean, we that's why we filed a court case.
Right.
We are going to ask a judge, to make sure that the landlord does the repairs as quickly as possible so that tenants are able to return home.
I see in these types of cases when it comes to fire or potential fires, the landlords don't have the smoke alarms that are supposed to be there. They don't have a sprinkler system that's supposed to be there. And the worst offense is always that the doors don't shut. They automatically stay open because the fire spreads and the smoke ends up going throughout the building. Do you find this to be the situation in this type of building as well?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, my work is working with groups of tenants throughout the Bronx, as it sounds like you have too.
Yeah.
I've seen this problem time and again, and unfortunately that is the case here too, where there are violations for lack of working smoke detectors and other violations for not having self-closing doors.
So I see you have the lawsuit was filed against Shukur Deduvac, Paul Deduvac, and Creston Real Estate Advisors Incorporated. What type of ramifications will this have? Will they not be able to purchase buildings in the future? Will there other buildings be looked at to make sure that they're in compliance? What usually happens when legal aid brings a lawsuit like this?
Well, we're certainly now alerted to this particular landlord and other buildings they have. In fact, just this week, the same landlords manage the neighboring building. We went out to meet with tenants to see.
And what'd you see there?
Unfortunately, the same kinds of situations.
Doors doors either illegally locked or not locking or something else.
All of those kinds of problems. From vermin infestations to floors that are very unlevel. So just the
we
same
were talking
kind of
about this
problems.
off camera about the HPD violations and infestation. I've seen a lot of bedbug cases in my office. It's almost like you make a 311 complaint and nothing sometimes happens, and only the worst case scenario brings somebody, unfortunately, like you out there to be able to bring a lawsuit and to remedy the situation. Is there anything we could do to quicken or to really? I mean, listen, it's much different than being bit by bed bugs and obviously dying by smoke inhalation or burning in a fire. But what can we do to better protect, I think, the tenants, certainly of the Bronx?
Well, so I'm a staff attorney in the Legal Aid Society's Housing Justice Unit, the Group Advocacy Unit. So we, and along with other legal services organizations, receive funding from the city to do work with groups of tenants, affirmative work where there are repair problems, where there are rent overcharges, things like that. We are available to represent whole groups of tenants.
You are.
And that's separate from the funding that legal aid and legal services receive to represent tenants in eviction cases. So it's a very important part of funding that the city provides to protect tenants and to stop landlord
All right, so
harassment.
let's say somebody's watching today, and somebody's watching and they think they have a building that has violations all over, and they may end up encountering, having some kind of issue where they may need to call you. What would you tell them to do? Do they first file complaints? Do they call the police? Who do they go to first?
Well, we always tell tenants as a first step, when you're not getting a response from a landlord to your request for repair, I mean, it's fine. Reach out to the super, try to get the repair done. Of course, it's the Bronx, and that doesn't happen a lot of the time. And so don't wait. I mean, call 311. Getting a violation documented, landlords don't like that.
No, they don't.
And so once it's on record, that creates a whole other series of things that can happen. The city might bring their own case because they take note of the violations. They could be the landlord could be hit with civil penalties. But not only that, it's just a matter of record, and it helps the tenant, later when they want to say, I've been living in these terrible conditions, and here's the evidence because there's violations from several months ago.
Violations is key to every lawsuit.
Absolutely.
Legal Aid, you guys have been doing great work, and you, Russel Crane, you in particular. Maybe you come back and tell us how things are going the next couple of months.
I'd be happy to, and thanks for having me on again.